You wore guillotine earrings to a meeting on a higher up being rude to lower staff, and the horror of that director's eyes when she saw your earrings and you just smiled. Okay, 1, marry me. 2, what you did here is a very blunt example of how the upper class sends messages to each other all the time without having direct conflict. So I'm Dr. Anna Kalschmidt. I research the unwritten rules of work for the working class and neurodivergence. I'm going to tell you how I've done this in a much more subtle way, but it was very satisfying, and why this matters. This is especially important if you've been told you're too aggressive or too blunt. People from working class backgrounds, very direct communicators. Also, if you're neurodivergent, you don't read context cues the same. This is how people disagree. And if you don't know this, you can do this accidentally. If you do know this, you can do it intentionally and powerfully and selectively. I've never admitted this publicly, but I'm going to now. Long time ago, I was in a very abusive situation. I wrote about it in the book, Navigating Your Ph.D. I worked for a place while I was doing my doctorate that my first day on the job told me that I was going to be a training assistant. The training manager was leaving. I didn't know till I got there. They gave me all of her duties immediately, said it was temporary. I also really needed that job. I was still on very low wages. I was like at the poverty line for the context of where I was living. And I did a really good job. And they explicitly asked me to be the training manager, to apply just for formality, and told all of my coworkers to consider me the manager, that is what was happening. So I know it wasn't just like my delusion or my gaslighting. They told my coworkers this. There's a lot of details that I wrote in the book that I won't go into here. Essentially, this all culminated in after I did the interview, after I'd been doing the job for a few months, my current contract that I was with them, because it was like quarter by quarter, hadn't been renewed. And so I asked them like, hey, so what's the update? My contract's about to run out. And they called me into an office with the door open, and it was an open floor plan outside. So with everyone to hear, all of my coworkers who had been told for months I was the manager, they had offered the job to someone else. And that the reason they hadn't told me, they explicitly said this, the reason they hadn't told me was because they didn't want me to stop doing the job that I was already doing until that other person got there for me to train them. And that's why they hadn't even renewed my current contract. They were going to, but they just didn't want to let me know earlier because they were losing labor. It was one of the most humiliating experiences of my career. And yet it was so illuminating, because while a downfall was that everyone knew and everyone heard that conversation, like when I walked out of that office, the faces of my coworkers were horrified. But that, while humiliating, was helpful, because it took away, while they were doing that intentionally, like they set me up for a humiliation ritual and to send a message of fear to the other coworkers. But what they didn't calculate was the solidarity that built among my coworkers. And it kept, above all, it kept me from gaslighting myself, which I didn't learn till several years later in therapy about a narcissistic relationship I had in my family that I had a tendency to do unless something was in writing. I would give the benefit of the doubt of maybe I misunderstood, maybe I misheard. But in that situation, it was so clear that like everyone knew that I knew I hadn't misunderstood or made something up or anything. And so I had told them in the interview that was supposed to be an interview. That's how they portrayed me. It's just a formality. I had told them that I had some other offers recently. Every time I have said this in interviews, it has been true, and every time I have not been believed, because I think that becomes such a common phrase for people to use that they don't take it seriously, especially from a woman, and I was a very young woman at that time. And so what do you think I did when I walked out of that office? I went and followed up on those other jobs. Those other offers, which they had been conditional offers, so I started jumping through all the other hoops to get the final offers. And this is where the context gets in for those who have stuck with me. I did the same fucking thing with telling them. 3 months went by, a whole quarter. Like I told you, I had quarter by quarter contracts. I waited till she came to my office and asked me, why haven't you signed your contract? And then, wearing the same thing, because I knew she'd ask me that day, wearing the same shirt, the same lipstick, the same earrings, walked to her same office with the same door open for the floor plan to hear, and said, I have actually accepted another offer. I was getting everything finalized, and that's why I hadn't told you yet. And they were silent. And it was the most agreeable, nice level conversation. And even the director, who was completely silent, so this was an assistant director and a director, the assistant director looked at the director and said, do you have anything to say? She's told us this great. And it was like a way better It made some other things difficult for me. It meant I had to move. It meant all these other things. But like, it was an impressive position. And he literally looked at me and actually said, and this is the only time I've had this. This was the first time I had a higher up actually say to me, "You told us you had options, and we underestimated you." And the relationship still lasted and benefited me for a while. Like, that director still wrote a referral for me for jobs years down the road because I had played the game. And that's what I need y'all to know about playing the game, is that it doesn't have to be selling out. It doesn't have to be losing yourself. A lot of people do, but it can also be how you set a boundary and not light a bridge on fire, even when you want to, and it's deserved, so that it benefits you long term. And I can assure you, it was very satisfying. Actually, I told this story as the opener to Module 2 of my workplace bullying course in my school, where I collaborated with Haisa Silva, owner and founder of How to Outsmart Your Toxic Boss, because something you'll learn in your career is that the don't burn a bridge has nuance. Because you don't need to burn a bridge, but you do have to build respect and put a gate on that bridge. And that can be very scary, but very often people who are from more affluent backgrounds, who have a lot of power, you have to show them you know the power games, you can play them, and you are not going to be fooled. Because people from working class backgrounds are exploited more because they think you don't know this stuff and that you can't leave because you have limited resources. I told that story in Module 2. I have a whole 6-module course on navigating workplace bullying. I opened that session with this example because to people from working class backgrounds, this will feel childish. It is, but it's what works, because rich people with power, don't do direct conflict. They do it through context. If you want to learn more about this, go to the link in my bio for school and take the workplace bullying course, and you can join me once a week for live group coaching.